Hello everyone, hello YouTube, new video, new luck, same old energy. And it's all about the questions upon questions. Fusion, yes, no, maybe Leonardo, what's more important, and so on and so forth. And as I already said in my first video about the fusion, it will really depend on whether this hero can nuke hard. And for that, today we'll take a closer look in a detailed test, how his stats are, how hard he hits with his A1, his A2, and his A3. In my opinion, the A1 actually plays an even bigger role than the A3, because the A3 only comes around every 4 turns. But the A1 can be triggered so often with group attacks and so on and so forth, so it's really the A1 that needs to hit hard for this hero to truly be an insanely good damage dealer. So let's move on to my favorite content, where I always get to compare damage dealers with each other, and that's the Hydra. I've built him for that purpose, and we'll compare him with another hero in a moment. Don't be surprised, he already has a 5-star soul here. I just recorded a video of a run earlier, and in that one he didn't have a soul yet. So that we have a meaningful value, and obviously not everyone gets the 5-star soul, because there will be another event where we first have to earn the 5-star soul. That's why the first test will be without the soul, and then I'll show you the second test with the 5-star soul as well. So how did I gear him? Classic setup. I want to maximize the hero's potential, so I've equipped him with 6 merciless pieces. With, well, relatively good stats, I'd say. He now has just under 108,000 HP. As I said, that's still with the soul equipped, so we need to subtract about 8,000 or rather 7,000 horsepower. Or is it 9,000? How much is it exactly? Yeah, we need to subtract 8,500. So actually, let's say he's at about 100,000 HP. He has 223 speed. He only has 90% crit rate. That's because we're putting him as Leonardo in the aura. That means, yeah, we don't need the full 100. And right now, we have 380 crit damage. Because, as I said, you have to subtract that again for the video. For the first run, he had this high crit damage, but not for the others. There we were at 340 crit damage. Right? I gave him a cat's eye, even with a boss slayer stone in it. Now he has nature's wrath. I'll show you, as I said the first video in a moment. Now he doesn't have a soul. And these are the masteries he has received. So the classic masteries for a nuker, I compared him. Of course, it's really hard to compare an HP nuker with another HP nuker. Especially so. I have to find someone who doesn't have a soul. That's why it was a bit difficult on my account, and I decided not to compare him with an HP nuker, but instead I picked another nuker, a defense nuker, but it's not one from the top shelf, at least for many out there. You'll probably be surprised and say, you're using that one? Okay. The problem is you always have to keep in mind when calculating damage, there is no HP booster in the game. Lysanthiya, of course, benefits enormously from a defense booster. Lysanthiya's damage is based on defense. And there is no HP booster in Raid. Meanwhile, there is an attack booster and a defense booster, which means the damage for each classification, attack and defense, naturally goes up significantly. You have to factor that into your considerations a bit. But it's also not something where I'd say that Lysanthiya now has an unfair advantage from it. That mechanic simply doesn't exist in the game. That's why you also have to take that into account when considering things. Does this hero actually deal that much damage, or does he not? Exactly, that's why. He also has 6-piece Merciless equipped. He also only has a cat's eye at level 12, so our fusion had it at level 18. He now has a 1-star Nature's Wrath for the test. At the moment, he also doesn't have a soul, and he has almost the same offensive masteries when it comes to damage. He also has 6-piece Merciless. And he reaches the following stats. We're now at 5,800 attack and defense with a similar speed to our dwarf. And he has 309% crit damage, so a bit less, but probably a very good defense stat. Just so you get a sense, I'd say in terms of gear, it's about the same. For that, I first built a team to test him against the Hydra. So I put him into an aura lead, so we have the aura so that both of us have 100% crit rate. I mean, Lysandir already has 100% anyway. And now we'll just watch the run for about 2 or 3 minutes. And I did several runs with him. Once, as I said, without a soul, then again with a soul. And we'll take a look at how the damage compares to a Lysandir. Yeah, Lysandir isn't really top tier, necessarily. In my opinion, as a nuker, I wouldn't even put him in the top 10, honestly. So this way, you'll have a bit of a reference point for comparison. From a solid nuker, not an overly strong nuker, Lysandir, compared to our new fusion. Because, as I said, comparing HP nukers is always a bit tricky. Alright, I'll let the run play out a bit because we can take a look at his skills. Alright, boom. Now it's his turn. There, now it's his turn. A 2. Yeah, the damage is manageable. It's not bad, but it's nothing crazy. That was Lysandria with the A1. That was a double hit. Just under 500,000 there. Now comes his A1 in combination with Mad Hatter. We're at just under 150,000 per hit. That's okay. Yeah, that's not a small amount. But it's not a huge amount either. That was his A3. And the A3 actually works really well. So it does 800,000. Later on, we'll see hits around 3 million on decapitated heads. With the gear he's currently wearing, that's okay. So the A1. The A3 is, I would say, clearly much better. So here was Lysantia's A1. And now let's wait and see what happens on decapitated heads. Let's take a look. So here comes his A1. We're at just under 200,000. Lysantia had 385 in there. All right, once again. Yeah, that was just under 700,000. So 700,000 on the decapitated head. That's Lisa. That's Lisa, an absolute beast. You just saw it. That was just about 8 million. We can rewind real quick. That was insanely intense. Dude, what's up with Lisa, the beast? Just look at that. Boom, boom. And now boom, boom. Jesus Christ. Okay. Of course, that already suggests... What's going on with the dwarf? I wouldn't put it that drastically, but it definitely shows the direction. That was his A3, 2.4 million. So as I said, the A3 really hits hard. Of course, you have to take everything into account in this whole consideration. Lisa the Beast also benefits from our dwarf, because of course that also gets this shatter buff, and that of course increases his damage as well. So basically the whole team benefits from it, because everyone ignores a bit of defense. Yeah, just under 500,000 per hit is okay. Alright, here comes another group attack. What is Lysantia doing? Yeah, that was about 680, I think, per hit just now. Let's see, will there be another turn? We're at 1,750,000 now, and that's why. In other words, as you can see, even this supposedly good A1 from our dwarf on paper just can't keep up with Lysantia's A1. And if we just take a look at Lysantia's skill kit for comparison, you wouldn't think, wow, that A1 must be insanely strong. So it's solid, definitely, it's good. But that just shows... So the A1 from our dwarf really isn't that outstanding when it comes to multipliers. Alright, let's see what's next. Group attack from our bum. We're just under 600 here. Yeah, that's already getting a bit better. That was an AoE from Lysand here. Alright, let's fast forward a bit. I did all the runs until our Granyt gets eaten for the first time. After that, I'll stop the fight. And then we'll just compare the damage numbers to see where we ended up. So now he's about to get eaten. Alright, boom, there was another AoE, about 700, 800,000 per hit. So per person, that's good. Yeah, you can see Lysand here breaks the million mark with his A1. Boom, look at that, 1.3 million, and that was just one hit. Here's another one. So, yeah, if you consider that at that moment, neither of them had a blessing. Our fusion had a cat's eye at level 18. Lysand here has cat's eye at level 12. You really have to take all of that into consideration. And if we look at the comparison now, we can see here we stopped after our thing got eaten, our Granyt. Granyt reaches 20.7 million, and I'm sitting there while our Lysand tier is at 33.2 million. In my opinion, that already says quite a lot. Now I have given both, or rather I have now given Granyt a level 5 soul and did the same run again, same setup, same gear, did not change anything, just repeated it. Just to see, now that we have a 5-star soul, of course with Nature's Wrath on him, can we then adjust this difference a little bit? Maybe even in Granit's direction. Although you can already see there, the 5-star soul is a 5-star soul. Especially on a damage dealer, that's actually a massive difference. And if he still doesn't win the damage comparison against the baseline, meaning against a 1-star Lysantia, I think you're slowly starting to see where I'm going with this. That was his A3 again, 1.1 million. So the A3 really hits well. You can't complain about the A3, it really hits very hard. You can definitely do some nice things with that in the arena. I'll show you another funny team in a moment. But this isn't something you should take seriously. It's more of a fun team. But you really can do some cool things with that attack. Alright, here comes his A1. We're at 180, 180. Yeah, that's all. Okay, but it doesn't really hurt. For the gear he's wearing, plus cat's eye, plus all sorts of other stuff, the hits really should be harder. Especially with the A1, I honestly expected a bit more punch. That's not enough to really compete with a ninja or a Crockett and so on at the top tier. to really be any competition there. So for anyone who has these heroes, Crockett, Ninja, or even a Harima, basically all those who benefit from a certain synergy with a group attack, whether that's a Crockett with Shaik or Mikage with Ninja, Harima, whatever, he just can't keep up there. That won't be enough. And conversely, it also won't be enough for the Chimera. I also tested it on the Chimera. Even there, it didn't completely convince me. As I said, don't get me wrong. It's all solid and it's all good. But in my opinion, it's not so good that I would say the fusion is a must-have fusion. I have to be clear about that at this point. The hero is cool, and you can also pull off some fun tricks with him in the arena. He will definitely be very, very good. I'm pretty sure about that because of his A3. There it was again, the A3, this time 2.4 million on the decapitated head. If you put that in perspective, with slightly better gear and better circumstances, I managed to do 25 million on the decapitated head with a Ninja. So these 2.4 million kind of feel like a kid's birthday party in comparison. I have to honestly say they're still good. Don't get me wrong, but they're just not top shelf, to be completely honest. Of course, you also have to take a few other considerations into account. After all, he's also a debuffer. He's not just a pure damage dealer, he also brings you his incredible death down, a very useful block debuff, plus a significant buff removal on his A1 ability. Overall, that's really a truly good and versatile kit paired with solid damage output. I wouldn't say it's super high damage, but it's solid damage. Alright, I'll fast forward a bit. And then we'll take a look at the end of the fight to see how we did. This time he did 28.8 million and Lisandir did 25.6 million. So he narrowly won this run. But as I said, 5-star soul compared to no 5-star soul. And the big problem I see with him as a hero, as a damage dealer, is that there is no HP booster in the game. And that's something attack heroes and defense heroes benefit from. A boost to attack or defense. Enormously. You really need to factor that into your setup, into your considerations, if you want to use him in the Chimera, in the Hydra, or in any other PvE content. I've also put together something a bit, well, something funny. You can really do some funny things with him because he has a single target attack, his A3, that can really hit hard. Just for fun, I put together a team here to see if his damage is enough to kill the Sand Devil. So, let's see what happens. Sifai puts them to sleep. Then we've got our Riho. She wanted to throw out some debuffs. Perfect. Alright, now comes a group attack. His A1. Boom, boom, boom. Yeah, that already looks pretty solid. Now comes the A3. Boom, 1 million. Impressive. Alright, reset. Boom, boom. Everything again. Group attack. Boom, boom, boom. And now his A3 comes again. Then the fight is over too. You might say, looking at this, wow, that's insane. That's seriously intense. But then every other Death Nuker, or almost any other Death Nuker with this gear as well. Although I have to say, with Death Nukers, it does get tricky. If I put a Phoenix in here now, there's really nothing to discuss. It would easily be enough. But you can use him to do some fun things, at least build a few amusing setups. He doesn't work on Shogun though, because unfortunately, he has the weak affinity there. So the whole thing won't work there. I tried it there, but yeah, you can't use him there. Let me just quickly show you something here. Yeah, we can quickly check in case he does crit. I think Tyr has more. No, he doesn't. Damn, okay, I didn't try that either. Yeah, he has the wrong affinity anyway. So you can pretty much forget about it being useful there anyway. So, to sum things up now. Who would I actually recommend the fusion to? Honestly, if you currently have the resources and you're saying, I'm saving up for Leonardo and I'm able to get Leonardo, then I would recommend you go for Leonardo. Especially if you've done Donatello the last fusion and you already have your Michelangelo from the daily doc content, then you have 3 turtles in your lineup with which you can do a ton of awesome stuff. And unfortunately, I have to say, our Granyt just can't keep up in terms of damage. Of course, if we keep spinning the wheel and think about it, in the faction wars, he's really good. So I have to say, the damage will help massively there. With the A3, you can really take a good chunk out of the boss. Not one-shot him, but still deal a lot of damage. He really helps a lot there, of course, plus the good debuffs, plus an accuracy boost, because that's another problem. So in faction wars, especially when it comes to damage dealers among the dwarves, especially the tanky damage dealers, they're really few and far between. There's only a Mountain King and a Samar, but Samar drops off a bit too since they're a bit more defense or HP based. You could maybe include a Tormin who can deal some damage, but there really aren't many among the dwarves, so in that regard, he's truly a good alternative. But overall, if I had to decide right now, I'm on the free-to-play account, should I do the fusion or go for Leonardo? At this point, I'm 99% clearly leaning toward Leonardo because he would provide a much greater benefit to my account than our Granyt would. Unfortunately, I have to say, it's solely because of the A3. It's good. I'm satisfied with it in terms of the multipliers. But personally, I just find the A1 a bit too weak to really compete at the top level. And that's why, for example, on the free-to-play account, I would say I'd rather go for Leonardo and get him instead. If I compare it, if I didn't have him but had Leonardo, then my account would be much better off than with Granyt and without Leonardo. So folks, let me know in the comments whether the damage test has shown you and convinced you to skip the hairstyle. Most of you, as I've read in the comments, were already leaning towards skipping anyway. Of course, I have to say if you're more of a PvP player for Arena, then he's definitely much more interesting than for the PvE area, in my opinion. In that case, he really is a viable alternative. For example, if you don't have He-Man, you can definitely say he's usable. Like I said, I'm not a fan of Arena, especially not on the test server. Arena is an absolute disaster there, which is why I'm not showing it to you, because I also don't know if the heroes on the other side are all equipped. When you rebuild and change so much on the test server, the heroes end up practically naked and you get a completely wrong impression of a hero. That's why I'm never a fan of showing that in the Arena. So folks, get down in the comments and we'll see each other next time. Yours, Easy. Take care. Bye.